And back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for the weirdest, most cringe-worthy times that former U.S. President Joe Biden said something he probably wishes he hadn't.
I get overwhelming support from the black leadership, young and old. Every poll shows me way ahead.
Number 10. Forgetting Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's name.
I want to ask you about your relationship with the black voter. I think it's fair to say, in order for you to go over the top in November, you are going to have a large black voter turnout to put you over the line to victory.
Look, we get it. Biden is known to stutter, and we're not making fun of that. What we're in awe of here is the ex-president's almost impressive gift for butchering people's names and, in his case, forgetting them entirely. Highly decorated four-star General Lloyd Austin, Biden's pick for Secretary of Defense, bears an impressive resume. And that's before you add in the fact that he was the first black person to fill the role.
We know where it is. And by the way, if you notice, whether it's young blacks or young whites or young Hispanics or young Asian Americans, they've never focused until after Labor Day. I mean, the idea they're focused intently on an election right now is not there.
Unfortunately, according to Biden, that seems to be the most memorable thing about him. In a July 2024 interview with Black Entertainment Television, or BET, Biden struggled to remember Austin's name when discussing his record of black appointees, giving him let's say a bare bones description.
It's all about treating people with dignity. And it's about making sure that, look, I mean, for example, look at the heat I'm getting because I named the Secretary of Defense, a black man. I named Ketanji Brown.
Number 9. His victory over Medicare.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number 1. Number 2, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 billionaires in America.
Yes, you read that right. Remember President Biden's disastrous performance in the first presidential debate of 2024? The one that led to literally dozens of calls for him to step down and resign? Yeah, you remember. While there were several moments that had Biden supporters watching through their fingers, we had to go with the one that found the then president victoriously claiming that he had beaten Medicare.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre later clarified that Biden had intended to say that he had beaten Big Pharma, but the damage had been done. Just weeks later, on July 21st, Biden announced that he was withdrawing from the presidential race and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor.
So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. It's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices.
Number 8. Insulting his future running mate.
Mr. President, you have creeped into our heart, you and your whole family, including Mom, and you occupy it. It's an amazing thing that happened. I knew how smart you were. I knew how honorable you were.
Before their friendship had time to blossom, Biden and Barack Obama were rivals, both seeking the 2008 Democratic presidential nomination. The two couldn't have been more different. Obama, then the face of a new generation of leadership, and Biden, the passionate elder statesman. While, of course, Obama was eventually elected and selected Biden as his VP, a 2007 gaffe appeared to reveal Biden's true thoughts.
That's a storybook, man.
Interviewed by reporters the same day he filed paperwork to run, Biden shared the following. You got the first sort of mainstream African American. who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. Biden was on the receiving end of well-deserved criticism for his awkward, inappropriate remarks.
Hours after he made these comments to CNN, Senator Obama released a statement saying, quote, "I didn't take Senator Biden's comments personally, but obviously they were historically inaccurate."
Number 7. Vice President Trump.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside.
No, sorry, this was never a possibility that Biden actually floated. But can you imagine the comedic possibilities that a Biden-Trump presidential ticket would offer? This characteristically baffling Biden blunder happened at the 2024 NATO summit in Washington. What was intended as a statement of support for Kamala Harris ultimately served as yet another embarrassing gaffe on Biden's part.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
Responding to Reuters reporter Jeff Mason's questions as to whether or not he had any concerns about Harris's ability to face Trump, Biden spoke before thinking and referred to his VP as Vice President Trump. Yeah, maybe this was a sign that he should have harbored some concerns.
The fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again.
Number 6. President Putin.
I've said before, Russia will not prevail in this war. Ukraine will prevail in this war, and we'll stand with them every single step of the way. That's what the compact says, loudly and clearly.
Want to know what might be the worst part of this particular gaffe? It happened mere hours after our last entry, the Vice President Trump slip-up. Yes, that same day. Whatever you think of the former president, at least he doesn't waste time. Just ahead of a news conference at the aforementioned NATO summit, Biden introduced Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as President Putin.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
You know, the leader of the country literally invading Zelensky's Ukraine. To his credit, Zelensky played it cool when prompted by Irish reporters the following Saturday. The leader from Ukraine graciously shrugged Biden's goof off, saying, "The United States gave a lot of support for Ukrainians. We can forget some mistakes. I think so."
What can I say? I really appreciate that President Biden, American society, being from the very beginning of this tragedy, from the very beginning of this full-scale war, from the first days being together with us.
Number 5. Harsh words for Trump supporters. It's probably worth noting that by the time Biden uttered this no-holds-barred take, he wasn't even the Democratic presidential nominee anymore.
Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this.
A late October Trump rally held at Madison Square Garden yielded a number of controversial moments. Chiefly among them, though, was comedian and Kill Tony podcast host Tony Hinchcliffe's remarks about Puerto Rico.
There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there. Again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody.
In a poorly received joke that was speculated to have nearly cost Trump the election, Hinchcliffe referred to the U.S. territory as a floating island of garbage. A Biden attempt to rebuke Hinchcliffe's racist remarks only ignited further controversy, with the then president declaring that the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been.
Number 4, his history with Nelson Mandela.
Spending some time with over the years,
who changed the world and the way we see it. Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela said, "A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination."
Once again, it feels important to remember that Biden's penchant for gaffes and misstatements long predates his presidency. The former president, vice president, and Delaware senator has routinely been taken to task for exaggeration, embellishment, and even outright lying. In fact, before his 2020 presidential campaign, Biden even referred to himself as a gaffe machine.
After he got elected president, he came by to see me because I was on the Foreign Relations Committee. He thanked me, along with I assume everyone else that had gone on that trip, for supporting sanctions against apartheid.
Case in point, an embarrassing February 2020 incident in which Biden repeatedly claimed that he'd been arrested in South Africa while trying to see future President Nelson Mandela in the 1970s. Biden even asserted that Mandela had personally thanked him for his efforts. Eventually, the Biden campaign was forced to concede that the incident hadn't occurred as the former vice president had described it.
I'll never forget, I asked him, I said, "You must be angry." He said, "No." He said, I learned to like my jailers. He said, "They were just doing the job." And he said, "When they all left, they all embraced me." And I thought to myself, what an incredibly remarkable man.
Number 3, poor kids and white kids.
The other thing we should do is we should challenge these students. We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it.
Oof. This is one slip-up that's really hard to make sense of. Speaking at a 2019 town hall in Des Moines, Iowa, Biden regrettably asserted that we have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. While the then presidential candidate immediately tried to correct himself, it didn't take long for President Trump's re-election campaign to seize on Biden's painful choice of words.
It's definitely a gaffe, and Joe Biden has a long record of making gaffes, so I don't think this one will stand out on that long record, but it does add to the question of whether or not Joe Biden is attuned to the moment, whether or not his moment has passed, and whether or not he knows how to speak to the Democratic base in 2019 and 2020.
According to Kate Bedingfield, Biden's deputy campaign manager, the future president was attempting to make the point that all children deserve a fair shot. And children born into lower income circumstances are just as smart as those born to wealthy parents.
Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it. We think, no, we're going to dumb it down.
Number 2, black voters' choice.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community.
During an interview on the Breakfast Club morning show with Charlemagne the God, Biden uttered a now infamous statement. If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. Almost immediately, people from all sides of the political aisle strongly condemned Biden's comment. Yet another awkward, racially charged remark in a series of them.
Joe Biden is using divisive political insinuations suggesting that Democrats are the good white people and Republicans are the bad white people, which is really amazing based on actual events in our history that truly propelled black people into freedom and a more just society.
While Biden made a swift apology admitting that he shouldn't have been so cavalier, Republican Senator Tim Scott remarked that I'd say I'm surprised, but it's sadly par for the course for Democrats to take the black community for granted and browbeat those that don't agree.
Take a look at my record, man. I extended the voting rights 25 years. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, the Corn Pop Saga.
I was one of the guards, and they weren't allowed to. There was a 3-meter board, And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
When Biden was running for the 2020 Democratic presidential nominee, a 2017 video surfaced that featured him spinning a long, confusing yarn about working as a lifeguard in 1962 Delaware. In the story, Biden claims that he was involved in a dispute with local bad boy Corn Pop, who led a local Delawarean gang called the Romans, who threatened the future president with physical violence.
There's a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, what am I going to do? He said, come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end.
While the internet reacted with incredulous disbelief at what sounded like an implausible story, evidence emerged supporting Biden's account, including Corn Pop's 2016 obituary. So with that settled, we have one more question. There are gangs in Delaware?
But I was smart then. I said, first of all, I said, when I tell you get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, you apologize to me? I said, I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said.
Which Joe Biden gaffe had your jaw on the floor? Are there any you feel we missed? Be sure to let us know in the comments below.
He said, okay, close the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.